Welcome, everybody, for this very, very, very special episode of Max Rice Tonight. Today we have Forbes 30 under 30, Sheridan Clayborne. He's 21 years old. He's got 9 years to spare. He's going to make it 9 more times. Sheridan went to Northwestern at 16 years old, probably the youngest person to do that ever. Worked at Goldman Sachs. Sold, I think, over $4 million in merchandise already at 21 years old. Welcome to the show. In Y Combinator, the kind of the Hogwarts for startups. Welcome to the show, Sheridan.
Thanks for having me. It was I love the Hogwarts for startups, by the way. I've never actually heard someone say that before, so that's a cool tagline for them.
It kind of is. Because it's kind of just like a very intense process, and when people get in, it's magical. Didn't you guys have Airbnb, Uber?
So they didn't have Uber.
Where?
They had, like, Airbnb, Dropbox. There was a lot of kind of like big tech companies now that have gone through the program.
Absolutely. Now Sheridan. So congratulations to that. That's so cool. One thing that my viewers I have never mentioned on the show that I actually used to be a football player and a football coach, and I've coached a football team a few years younger than you. Even though I never coached you, we definitely you might remember this, but we interacted a bunch because you were always very curious. Like you were always athletic, even when you were out of shape. You were always athletic and bigger than your peers, but you always had like an intellectual curiosity. It was really cool, even at a young age. And
yeah, so, definitely interesting. I know we had talked a little bit kind of before I started recording. Did not know that I used to talk about philosophy on the football field. Maybe that was why I wasn't very focused when I was playing football.
I know it's a baseball metaphor, but you're the stereotypical kid in right field picking grass. Even though you had the athletic abilities, you always were very curious and also gentle-hearted. You would knock kids over and pick them back up. You which is good. Not good for football, but good for life.
Not good for football, but I guess it was good to ponder the universe as I was getting hit by some bigger kid in football.
you were doing a lot of the hitting. You were definitely Don't sell yourself short. But my first question to you is because a lot of what you've accomplished already shouldn't be possible, and like a lot of parents, friends, people that are watching this video, a lot of what you accomplished at 21 would say, hey, like just relax, be patient. You can graduate college at 22. You got into Northwestern at 16. Like what kind of can you go into maybe like your mentality, like how did you kind of have that mentality to kind of just erase those boxes of what is and what isn't possible?
Yeah, I mean it was definitely a learning experience throughout. I mean, I've definitely gone through many ebbs and flows. Like I've definitely had a lot of points in my life where I've been very proud of like the success that I've had, but I'm also cognizant of the fact that like a grand majority of the things that I've tried out haven't necessarily worked. I think for me, a lot of it just comes down to this like core fundamental belief that if there is precedent of someone doing something, I can do that too. So I remember like I always used to look up to like even now, I feel like by conventional standards I've done quite well, but there's a lot of people who I feel like are actually doing much better than me. Like you've got like the founders of Brex, they're 22, 23, they're billionaires. You've got folks like Mark Zuckerberg setting a precedent of like building these massive organizations by the time that they're 21, 22, 23. And like the way I look at it is like, look, at the end of the day, they're all people. If someone else can do it, so can I, so can anyone else. It's not that any of these people are fundamentally different in such a way where it's this unreachable, unattainable goal. So it's about progressively just setting the building blocks to be able to get there. But even now, like I still very much so feel like I'm kind of like punching up, and there's all these like people who I really look up to and aspire to be like, who, I'm trying to be able to hit goals that they're setting.
You could be doing a lot better, Sharon. I agree. You're an absolute failure.
I'm
just kidding. I'm kidding.
Yeah, really though. Like, I mean,
yeah.
I genuinely, I'd say like as I've done better, if anything, I've gotten more competitive. Like I see how much more is possible. I realize like, well, if I can do this, one, I know other people can do it, but I also recognize like how much more there is to be done. Like I still look at the day and I'm like, you know what? There's so many ways I could have better optimized what I'm working on. There's ways that I could have put in more time. There's ways I could have better allocated resources or worked with people or managed. So I don't know. It feels like there's a lot of opportunity out there.
So like being quick and just always improving. So you've had experience kind of like in many different startups, as you mentioned, failed and successful. And also you've had experience with some of the greatest American institutions in American history, Northwestern and Goldman Sachs. What are some lessons you've learned from the great American elite institutions? And then what are some lessons you've learned just kind of on your own, running multiple startups?
Yeah. I mean, as far as like kind of like working in corporate, I'm actually very thankful for my experiences there. A lot of the benefit that I felt like I got. So like when I was a sophomore and junior, my sophomore year, I worked at JP Morgan. My junior year, I worked at Goldman. That's when I was like 17 to 18. It was really interesting.
I was a lifeguard, Sheridan.
Look, at the end of the day, like,
yeah, sorry, I'm kidding.
I'm sure even, you know, working as a lifeguard has kind of a lot of experiences. Yeah, for me, it was like I came into JP Morgan and kind of Goldman, really, really interested in kind of personal finance. Like a lot of it came off the back of like, had watched The Big Short, had watched The Wolf of Wall Street, you know, had listened to a lot of these people who were working in finance. Like, this is a fascinating asset class. And I think by having that experience, I realized what I both did like, and I got to reconfirm or confirm some of those initial assumptions I had, and then also got to figure out like what are the aspects that I don't like. And I think a lot of that just kind of served as actually the precedent for what I'm building now. Like my kind of experience at Goldman was, wow, it's fascinating how these billionaires are able to generate like 20, 30, 40% year over year returns, how they're able to build all this wealth, how this financial engineering stands up these amazing companies. That's incredible. But I also had this kind of conflicting sentiment, which is, it's great that they're able to build all these incredible things, but it's not really helping the people that I know. Like when I think of like folks who are low income, minorities, women, foreign internationals, like a lot of them are kind of excluded from being able to get the benefits of compounding interest and saving and investing and financial education. So I got to kind of see pretty early on in my experience at Goldman, like, wow, okay, like finance is incredible, but I really want to make it incredible for the people that I know, for like the communities and the demographics that I spend time with. So it served as a really good learning point for both understanding what I did want to do and what I didn't want to do. So
it's funny that it kind of goes back to football, because it's like you can be a good hitter, but you don't want to because you don't want to hurt people.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I think that there is like a whole lot of value of doing things that you don't want to do. Because at the end of the day, like, how are you supposed to know? Like going into it, my experience at JP Morgan at Goldman could have been, wow, I actually love working for these big corporations. I love like financial engineering. I love asset management. I love private equity. But it's also great to like kind of check off that, like, you know what, like this isn't the right fit for me. I actually like startups. I like managing companies. I like building things from like 0 to 1 more. But I'm still definitely very happy I had that experience.
So what are the pros and cons with the startup experience so far?
I think a lot of the like classical things people would point to is you take on a bunch more risk. There's a lot more ambiguity. The hours are a lot longer in the sense that just like you're kind of always on. Like if a problem comes up and you're on vacation and it's midnight, well, there's no one else to handle that problem other than you. So you have to fix it. For me, I'll say like, I actually enjoy that. Like I like the fact that I can devote so much of my time to building. I like the ambiguity. I actually like the risk. I find for me, like having a personal invested stake in what I'm building and knowing that if this does super well or if this really doesn't do well, it's really kind of on me and my co-founder and on my team. I actually appreciate that because it gives more weight behind the actions and what I'm doing. And at least for me, that is a driving force behind learning and building and creating. So yeah. I mean, for me, like I truly do love what I'm doing here. Like even when it comes to like, you know, being at the office on Saturday, like I enjoy that, especially during a pandemic. I think I've realized how appreciative I am for work. Because if I didn't have work right now, my God, would I be bored out of my mind? At least for me personally, like I have no idea what I'm doing. So I'm happy I have anything to do, to be honest.
And I know you had a lot of success selling shoes, but I do think Lend Table is right up your alley. And so can you maybe talk about how the idea and how Lend Table kind of came to fruition? Because I do think that's kind of goes perfect with who you are and what you're trying to do.
Yeah, absolutely. So for, I guess, like a little bit of context, I've been running startups for a while now. Kind of, as you mentioned, I'd had this like hedge fund where we sold like sneakers, tickets, apparel, all that stuff. We'd kind of grown that to actually over 10 million in revenue at the time I was 18.
So I was wrong about 4. It was 10. Sorry.
Oh, it's totally.
Congratulations. I was off by a digit.
Yeah, all good. Yeah, so it's like I really enjoyed that business because like I was able to help support my parents, able to kind of bring in some money. It was really interesting to build it. Realized I didn't really feel like I was kind of making an impact though. Like no one was really better off as a result of my service existing, other than the fact that we were just kind of selling some sneakers. So after the experience at Goldman and JP Morgan, got really interested in personal finance, wanted to open up the same level of access that people had at Goldman to the people I knew, had a slate of kind of building these different fintech startups. And the takeaway that I had from those experiences is I kept trying to attack it from this approach of education. I was like, if I can just better educate and automate and advise some of these lower and middle income folks on how to best manage their money, like it'll make it so they can appreciably start to build wealth. And I think what I started to see is that while education is certainly a fundamental problem that needs to be solved, it's like problem one. What the first problem is actually the fact that people don't have money in the first place. Like when you make 40, 50, 60K a year, it isn't your fault that you don't have money in a savings account or a retirement account or 401k, because you've got kids, you've got food, you've got all these things that you need to take care of that you kind of can't do without. Like it's not anyone's fault making 40K a year that they have no money in their 401k, because when you have student loan debt and you've got a mortgage, you've got credit card debt, you actually shouldn't be saving and investing for retirement. You should be taking care of all those first order needs that you need. So I was just racking my brain on like, how do we actually fundamentally help give people access to that liquidity when in a lot of cases, they don't have that money in the first place. So the idea ended up coming up. I was at Dropbox as a machine learning product manager. I was 19. It was my first full-time job. This was kind of right after I dropped out of school. And I was just setting up my 401k. So as most people do when they get in their first job, I was on Vanguard. I was like, this site kind of doesn't make any sense. It's pretty confusing. But a bunch of like the people on HR and benefits were talking about how there was this 401k match. I'm like, wow, that's awesome. Like they just give you $6,000 if you put $6,000 in your 401k. I talked with other of my friends about it. I'm like, is this just free money? Like, is there a catch? Like, what am I missing? And they're like, yeah, like you put it in a year, they'll match it, you double your money. And I'm like, oh, great. Okay. Obviously I'm going to use it. Like who wouldn't want $6,000 for free?
And unless you have emergencies, as you said talking earlier.
Exactly.
Unless you don't know like what's on the food on the table for the next meal.
Exactly.
Or you got a family to take care of. Yeah.
Yeah, you're exactly right. So in my mind, I was like, why wouldn't I use this? When I talked with a bunch of my friends though, they were all telling me how they weren't using it. And my first initial reaction was kind of the same thing I'd done in my previous startups. Was like, God, like these people must not be educated about their 401k. They must not get the benefits. And they're like, dude, like, no, it's not that. It's just like, I'm making 70K a year. I live in San Francisco. I don't want to have to give up 6% of my paycheck. I don't want to have to give up $6,000. It's great that they're doubling my money, but I need that money right now. So really the fundamental premise behind the idea was there were all these people who have all this money tied up in 401k matches and employee stock purchase plans and HSAs. And if I can just give them that money in the first place, they can get these employee benefits, they can build all this wealth. And it's really a way of fundamentally helping people build that appreciable wealth. So the way we look at it is like in the same way that venture capitalists are investing in our startup, they give us $100,000 under the idea that that 100,000 is going to turn into millions of dollars for us. We really want to be like the venture capitalists for everyday people. We're like, hey, we're going to give you $10,000 and that $10,000 is going to turn into hundreds of thousands of dollars over the course of your life.
You're the excuse remover, because there is a lot of like legitimate excuses. As you said, you do have to take care of yourself first. And so I get why you wouldn't take advantage of the programs. It's kind of like, it's a weird parallel, but it feels like if you don't put in your advantage miles on an airplane.
Yeah.
It's like a program that exists, but you, for whatever reason, time, money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that has been the most fascinating about building the business is when we were first starting, our whole target demo was people who aren't using it. We're like, if you're not using your 401k match, this is literally just going to save you an extra $3,000 every single year, full stop. So let's focus on those people. What's been really interesting to see though, is that we've had people from all different levels of income spectrum sign up. We've had people making 40K a year to upwards of $250,000 a year. And when we first had some of those higher income employees sign up, we're like, wait, like, why aren't you guys using your 401k and ESPP? Like, you've got the money to use it. And they're like, yeah, I've been using it. Like, I'm more than happy to contribute because it's free money, but it really sucks that like 6% of my salary is tied up in my 401k, 15% of my salary is tied up in my ESPP. That's 20% of my salary. I make $250,000 a year. That's $50,000. Like, yeah. I want to have flexibility with that capital. And ideally, I wouldn't have to lose any money from my paycheck to get these benefits.
And income has nothing to do with how much is in your bank account, because a lot of people have families, make bad investments, myself included.
And even, I think what was even like the most interesting was like we even had some folks who were making really good investments. Like we've got some users where they're like, honestly, I don't want to have to tie up $50,000 in this specific ESPP. I'd much rather you guys give me the money to access it. I essentially just get that ESPP for free now, and now I have the $50,000 to invest in any of the other asset classes that I want. And that was a really interesting insight we came into, that this liquidity problem really affects everyone. Like liquidity is one of the most important assets you can manage, because that determines the flexibility you have with all of your saving and investing.
And I think the average American has less than $2,000 in liquidity.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And even a lot of the richest people in the world that we think of aren't even that liquid, like Elon Musk, who I love. But a lot of that is that they can't go to the bank account and get that money. And it's a shame. There's a lot left on the table. So so I'm a huge fan of Y Combinator, and I haven't been to Hogwarts, and because you have that access to the wizardry world, what are either some advice or some changes that happened to Lendtable since entering Y Combinator? Like some kind of good nuggets they gave you.
I think one thing that was really nice is they have this like interesting kind of hands-off approach where essentially they care a lot about like transparency and also just accountability. So one thing that we've had to hold ourselves to is having weekly meetings where we go through all of our metrics, all of our roadmap, and we're very clear about like this week, like we do ours every Tuesday. We say exactly what we're going to do over the week. And then next Tuesday, we report on all the things that we're doing. We say, what were the key metrics that we were moving? Like, let's just say, like right now, we're going through a landing page redesign. The goal there is to make it so we are increasing our conversion. So when people hit the website, we want a higher percentage of the people who hit the website to actually convert into paying users. We track that. We show, one, did we actually fulfill what we were saying we were going to do? And did it actually move the metrics that we were looking to move? And I think that level of accountability and metric keeping is really important, because even, you're a startup, like things change, they can change day to day, they can change week to week. That's okay. It's just really important though, that you can set goals, set metrics, set a vision, and understand how are you actually tracking against those things over the course of months and years.
That's awesome. How can people find Lendtable, or like who is how can they find Lendtable, and who would best benefit from it?
Yeah, so if you are anyone who works at a company with a 401k match and employee stock purchase plan, we'd love to essentially give you all of the money today so that you don't have to put in any of your own money to get those benefits. Specifically, if you're not using your ESPP or your 401k, it's just free money because we're helping you get these benefits that you wouldn't have in the first place. But even if you're someone who is using those benefits, but you're like, damn, I kind of wish I didn't have to lose all that money from your paycheck, we'd love to help you too. You can find us at lendtable.com. We're active on Facebook, Twitter. You can also honestly text me at 224-392-3892 in case you have questions about the product.
Talk about personal access.
Oh, yeah. Fuck yeah. I mean, you can literally call me right now at any point in time and say, hey, I've got questions about how Lendtable works, and I'm happy to take you through it.
So do you think that's really important with culture, to kind of be accessible? Because I think that's like my biggest complaint about Silicon Valley is when I have a problem with Gmail or Yahoo or Zoom or anything, you don't have that accessibility. Do you think, because like the Silicon Valley world kind of is more towards automation, dehumanization. So how do you kind of find that balance, or what are your thoughts on that balance? Like, should we move?
For a startup, you have to. Like, it makes more sense for a platform like Gmail, where it's like we have hundreds of millions of users. It's literally not possible for us to serve all these people manually. So we therefore have to have lots of automation that we bake in to make it even possible to serve these customers. But yeah, I mean, when you're first building a company, like things are going to break all the time. Things aren't going to work. Customers are going to have questions. They're going to have concerns. And at the end of the day, it's paramount that you serve them to the best of your ability. So yeah, I mean, I think it's very typical for startups. It's typical and essential for startups to constantly be like the customer service agent and the sales rep and the engineer and the person who's doing quality assurance and the people who's doing fundraising. Like, you kind of just have this catch-all. Like, whenever there's something that needs to be done, it's not like you have such a large organization where other people are just going to take it off your plate. Like you either do it, someone on the team does it, or never gets done. So you just have to knock out things as they come.
How many people do you have involved now? How many people have their are doing 401k match through LendTable?
Yeah, so we gave out over $75,000 last month, and we're on track to do about 150 to 200,000 this month.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, really, our vision is like, kind of by like our kind of year end, we'd love to, essentially have help people build over $1 million in wealth.
Wow. And do you manage expanding to kind of other programs that people aren't taking advantage of?
Yeah. I mean, so for a little context on kind of the space. So in the US, 25% of people who have a 401k match don't use it. That's 30 million Americans, leaving over $24 billion of free money on the table every single year. So we're hyper-focused on serving those customers, really helping them access their benefits. But we really just see that as the first stepping stone. There's this broader suite of employee benefits. Think HSA match, ESPP, unutilized PTO. You've really got even this biggest share of the pie, which is so much of employees' compensation is tied up in equity. Like if you work at a place like Google, you might get $100,000 of cash compensation a year, but you also have $100,000 of Google stock. But that Google stock is locked up over the course of a year. You can't touch it. You have no liquidity. You can't put it in a diversified portfolio. You're completely beholden to what if the stock goes down 50% or up 50%? You have no idea. So yeah, there's this whole suite of kind of employee benefits that we're looking at, which we would say encapsulate about $150 billion of untapped opportunity that we're looking to help people build.
And there's so many studies on just kind of how like freeing up even small amounts could just change lives, families, and whatever.
Yeah.
So I'm so glad that you're doing something good. I mean, I'm proud of you regardless, but and it was really cool to see you kind of like just be just like tinkering and just constantly doing new things. But like, really proud of you with LendTable, Sheridan.
I appreciate that. That means a lot.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. But no, I mean, no, hopefully it means a lot to you. But yeah, it doesn't. Not gonna get you into Y Combinator. But you got in, so congratulations. And thank you so much for your time. This is awesome. We'll have you on next year when you get on 33rd for 30 under 30 again.
Hell yeah, let's do it.
8 more years.
I think it's like a one-time thing. Like once you're on it, you're on it.
No. We'll talk to
Maybe
Forbes.
I could be wrong.
We'll talk to Forbes. We'll get you on 8 times.
Okay. I
I was Times Man of the Year in 2012, so don't sleep on me.
There you go. Were you actually?
Everyone was. It was like you. It was like a mirror.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny.
I think it might be my LinkedIn. But no, thank you so much for your time, Sheridan. Go kick some butt. Proud of you. And lendtable.co or .com?
Lendtable.com.
Official. Lendtable.com.
Yes, sir.
Get on there right now. Even if you don't have a 401k, send to your friends and family. Thank you so much, Sheridan.
Exactly.